So
Okay.
today I'm going to introduce you to Brian Lee, who is a colleague of mine. So welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And you teach out of, you said Rockville, Maryland,
Yep.
or DC?
Yep. Just a little ways north of DC.
Fun. Good. So would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. So I have a private studio here, and I teach a wide variety of people. Tends to fall mostly into two groups, which is high school kids who are fairly serious, a lot of college prep, and then also adult students, both people who sing in bands and that sort of thing, and a fair amount of church musicians. And once in a while, I'll have someone like an opera chorist, or we have a lot of choirs in this area. And so a lot of people also come for preparation for auditioning for the different choirs and groups around here. So that's kind of my basic clientele. I've been teaching voice for about 15 years. I say teaching voice for that long. For about 30 plus years, I've been a coach. I play the piano, and I'm pretty good with languages too. So I coached singers ever since college, since I was about 20. And but I didn't really get into the vocal training part of it until a lot later. So.
And do you have a blog?
Yeah, I've got a blog called vocalability.com, and yeah, I write somewhere between 2 and 7 articles a month. It's been closer to the 2 number the last couple of years since I've been working on that book that we'll be talking about. But yeah, I like to write about singing. I sort of get meta. I don't do a lot about how to sing, but I do a lot about how to study singing, or how to sort of make sense of terminology and concepts and things like that.
Right. So we'll get back to the book in a moment, but you actually have the honor of presenting at the upcoming National Association of Teachers of Singing conference.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. I'm doing a poster session there, and I didn't know what a poster session was until I went to the last NATS conference. But it means you have a little presentation space. You have a table, and literally a poster. Mine is going to be 3 feet by 4 feet, sitting on that table. That is sort of a summary of some kind of project that you're selected to present. And they have, it's kind of like office hours where you're at your table with your presentation, and you may have handouts or something, and talk about some kind of work you're doing. So mine is called Self-Assessment Protocol for Singers, and it's a fancy name for a user-friendly system of checking on your vocal progress. So to kind of enable singers to figure out if training is working out for them, or even their own self-study, sort of how do you measure whether you're getting better vocally or not. So that's my project and my presentation.
Excellent. And that brings us to the book then, because this is partly what the book is about. You want to tell us a little bit about?
Yeah, the one grew out of the other. So the idea for the book came first, and then this became a big part of the book. And so the book is called Sane Singing, A Guide to Vocal Progress. And it's with my final editor right now. So I'm hoping I will have it actually in print in May. And I will certainly have it by the time of the NATS conference at the end of June 2018. And the book is about how to find good instruction for yourself. What are some of the things to look out for in this modern world of voice instruction, because there's so much out there to pick from for your training. And so when I got sort of into the idea of writing about how to help people figure out how to find good training, then it was like, well, what's the end game is improving your singing. And so how can people figure out if their singing is improving or not? Is there some way they can do it besides someone telling them, hey, you're getting better? Is there a way you can get a little perspective on yourself and determine better how you're doing. So the whole book is sort of aimed at empowering singers to find the instruction they need and how to get good guidance and how to sort of figure out if things are going well or things need to be adjusted. So that's sort of how the self-assessment part links in with how to get good instruction part.
Yeah. So I want to unpack those topics in a moment, but what inspired you to write this book? What made you feel as though this is a book that singers really need?
Well, there's a couple things. I mean, one is the whole slant of my blog since 2010 has been about making sense out of confusing things in the world of singing. So there's sort of that trying to be a guide through this complicated world idea. The other thing is helping a lot of students to audition for college. Over the years, I've helped prepare a lot of 11th and 12th grade high school kids to get ready to go major in music or minor in music or do something in the performing arts. And it's really, they know they want to go major in music, but their parents don't know what to do. The kids don't know what to do. They don't know what the options are for higher education, for example. They also, especially the musical theater kids, will be bombarded with all kinds of people wanting to sell them coaching or products to try to get a leg up onto getting into the schools and into the programs. So it's kind of a combination of me enjoying explaining concepts and a lot of my own clients finding things pretty confusing. I'm going to prepare them for whatever comes next, and then they go away, and what's going to be out there for them, in addition to just attending classes at college.
Did you also find that you had a similar experience as you were exploring your own voice and figuring out where to go with it, that there was just, you were overwhelmed with a lot of the options and used by the terminology and what have you?
Yeah, that's a great point. I was. I had sort of an auspicious beginning as a teenager singer, and then when I went to college, I didn't have a great experience, and actually I had a lot going on in music, so I did a lot of other things besides just sing. Like I mentioned, playing the piano before, and I played several instruments, and eventually really got into music teaching. But since I didn't really come back and figure out how to sing until I was a lot older, till I didn't feel confident with my own singing. Each time I would come back and start lessons again, I tried a couple times before it kind of took in my 30s. I just didn't know how do you find a good teacher, and how do you know if it's working for you or not. And then you get all this unsolicited feedback. Everyone thinks they can critique a singer. And so I just found it really confusing my own self. And then after I started teaching my own self and wanted to, have my own studio, not teach my own self. I wanted to do my own continuing education. Oh gosh, there's so many things to study for teachers. There's just a lot of ways to go. So.
We were just talking about this before we started this video, that there are even just as teachers, there are so many conferences that happen annually that we would love to be able to go to all of them, but it's just not feasible. It's not, there's a time factor as well, but there's so much we want to do to continue just, improving our skills and educating ourselves and really offering the best to our students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's just so much to explore, and I wish I had more time and dollars to explore, some of the specific pedagogies, where someone has really developed their own principles to a high degree. I think that's fascinating. I try to slow down my tendency to judge something I don't understand until I've actually taken a class in it or a workshop or something, because there's a lot of fabulous people working in whole different methodologies.
Mm-hmm. So let's unpack the book topics a little bit. Specifically, I wanted to talk about making sense of that changing marketplace, because I know I'm here on YouTube, and YouTube didn't exist when I first started, really. Oh, that's not true. It was new when I first started teaching, or how old is YouTube? Actually, 10 years?
It's a little more than 10 years. Yeah, yeah. I just saw some stuff about the origins of YouTube recently. It's in the like 2000 numbers, 2006 or somewhere back there. But
all right. Okay. So yeah, so YouTube didn't exist when I first started teaching. So even online instruction didn't really, it did exist, but it was not as commonplace as it is now. And so now singers can study with teachers from around the world. They have a different way of seeking out teachers and finding the right teacher for them. But at the same time, the market is very saturated. There are so many different options out there, and I can see why it would be very confusing for students to, to find the right teacher, to know where to look, and to, know what to look for.
yeah.
So do you have any advice that you could give us now, about, how we can kind of make sense of that and make decisions that make sense for us and that will work for us as individual singers?
Well, one thought that comes to mind, there's an off in the people who are doing videos about singing and about how to sing and giving tips and so forth. There's an awful lot of it's this way because I say so, and people aren't always giving good backup, to their statements. And so one thing I really encourage is sort of questioning if you find a new instruction and someone says, hey, this is the way to whatever, this is the way to manage your breath, or this is the way to modify that vowel, or this is, you get these tips that are fairly specific, and a YouTube teacher may talk with great conviction about this. What do they offer as an explanation for it? I really love the why, and I feel like the teacher needs to give a little bit of why when they say, do it this way. Do it this way because can go a long way, rather than saying, this is the way we do it, period.
I agree. I'm very much a why person. I love to give it a why. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because again, I think it's because I have experienced situations where I was not given the why, and it really left me feeling confused and a little bit, I'll say disoriented, just not knowing what I'm doing and where to begin and where I'm going with it. And so, even in my videos here and in the writing, I just always like to give a little bit of that why, sometimes a lot of that why. And
Sure.
just, because it's one thing for me to give an instruction, and some people actually want that. Some singers are happy, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And as long as I get the results, I'm happy.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like that's a very, very small minority of individuals who learn best in that kind of environment. Most need at least a little bit of we're doing this and this is going to serve this purpose.
Yes.
And I'm assigning this exercise because I feel like this is going to meet you where you're at in your training.
Mm-hmm. I really like on the YouTube, like one of the things you do I really like is having an issues-oriented lesson for your YouTube video. So like, you have a specific issue of singing, and then you talk about that one issue in quite a lot of depth. Like let's say vowel modification. What do you do with an E vowel when you go up high? And here's the options, and here's why, and here's the acoustical reason why something needs to happen, and here's the muscular reason why something needs to happen, and here's what the audience needs to hear in order to make sense out of what you're singing, to really attack a problem. The kind of general things about, 6 tips to adding an octave to your range, that is very hard to understand how anyone can really be very effective when it's so general. I mean,
I tend to agree. I think that, but it's also very difficult, again, as a teacher in a changing marketplace, because for those of us on YouTube, it's such a broad audience.
yeah.
And there are some singing teachers who will tend to, because they are more generalized in their instruction, will
Hmm.
tend to appeal to a much larger audience, a much broader audience.
Yeah.
And then those of us who are a little bit nerdier and a little bit more into the details will probably not appeal to as broad an audience. And that's fine. But I feel as though, I think that there's a growing hunger, even in singers, to understand the why.
Hmm.
And just as there's a changing marketplace for teachers, there's the whole information highway. It's just changed everything.
Hmm.
There's so much information that is available now,
Yeah.
to them, that gives them so much clarity, I think, in some ways, but also confusion on the opposite end. But there's so much information that they have to kind of weed through,
Yes.
separating the chaff from the wheat, I guess, in some cases. But also, I think it gives them, it has them coming into that search for a singing teacher with a little bit more information and
Hmm.
a little bit more of an understanding of the options that are out there. When I started taking singing lessons, I didn't even know that there were options. I mean, this was pre-internet as we know it.
Yeah.
And I just thought that you just found a singing teacher. Like, I didn't know. I didn't know that there were teachers who taught different styles. And I mean, part of it was my own ignorance. I was very, I won't say, I don't know. I was isolated from a lot of things.
Well, even me, I played flute at a very high level. I was in orchestras and played concertos with orchestras, and I was at a very high level on instruments, but I didn't have any idea about, because all flute teachers generally are teaching the same kind of things, but I had no idea about the different kinds of voice teachers and that it was so individualized.
Yeah, it just it used to be that geography played an important role. You just found a
Mhm.
teacher that was within a reasonable driving distance or walking distance, the teacher around the corner, and that's what you did. You just went to the nearest teacher for any instrument. And
Yeah.
again, now we have the option to learn online, which now gets rid of the fences and that barrier of geographic distance. And now we can train with somebody in Japan. You know.
Right. Right.
And but yeah, and I think for me, obviously I'm a singing teacher, so I understand a lot of this now. But had I had access to the internet as we have now, like, I think I would have made different choices, because then I would have realized that, oh, I'm really into this style, and and I want somebody who actually is really knowledgeable about this style and the techniques that are required to make the sounds that I want to make.
Yeah.
And I just kind of went into it like, oh, you teach singing? Okay.
Yeah.
So before we go, I do want to unpack the other part of this, and that's the vocal self-assessment. I don't know if
Yeah.
there's anything that you want to share with us about that, give us some hints about
Sure.
what it is that
Well,
you do.
I can sort of tell you about the structure of it and what the experience of doing the assessment is like. So the assessment, it has three main parts to it. It has specific guidance on how to test yourself on certain vocal function, things like singing scalar passages, extending range, dynamic ranges, um, vowel, how you handle vowels over ranges. There's specific exercises for that you can do. I'm right now working on, I have it all in notation, so people who are music readers can use the staffs I've drawn in the actual document itself. But I'm also going to put all of those as sound files that people can access, so that people who are not readers can do the same thing by ear. So there's that. There's the part of doing the exercises. Then there's a component where you do a performance for yourself on video, and there's sort of a guide sheet on how to assess your video. So it's sort of going in depth, reviewing your video. And then the last part of it is just, it's fairly simple, as a journaling section. But the idea is that you would take the same sequence of activities and do it over time, say every 6 months or a year. So you have benchmarks. So I've made it so the tasks are clear, but the way you rate those tasks is somewhat flexible. So you could do it, you could on the ones that are more quantitative, you could give it an A, B, C, D, F, or a 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, or smiley face, frowny face, neutral face. But the point is to assess yourself the same way over time across different teachers and across different points of your career, so that you can sort of see, how am I doing, you know? Also, storing those recordings over time would be really cool too, to sort of hear yourself and watch yourself over time. So it's the document is a sort of guidance in how to do that. So that's essentially what the self-assessment protocol procedures are. And I think it's a good starting point. I mean, I haven't seen anything quite like this before, so I expect in another few years someone will come up with something better, but that's great.
Well, I'm a big fan, and I always encourage my students to track their progress, and I usually have them track it in a few different ways. Journals, something similar to what you're doing there. I have them record themselves. I haven't really thought of doing video recording, but I do have them, I'll suggest that they record themselves singing a certain song in a given key, and then every so often record themselves singing the same song in the same key, and really just take note of the improvement that they're seeing, because that way it's sort of an apples to apples comparison. And
apples to apples is what it's all about. Yep.
Yeah. Well, so interesting that you have them do like a video recording. So why a video recording as opposed to
because some of the measures that I have them do have to do with things like bodily alignment, apparent ease with which they're singing, facial expression that seems to be congruent with the music, and just visual effect as an audience member. So I have sort of, yeah. So
it's an important part of singing, definitely.
The presentation, you know. So yeah, that's why I had the video part of it.
That's fun. And the journaling, I'm assuming you have very specific suggestions in terms of what to include in this journal?
I made that fairly free form, but at the beginning of the journaling section, I have prompts. So I say, here's some directions you could go in writing about your general impressions of your singing. So, and I have several questions you could ask yourself about what you're seeing as you watch the video. So that could be more free form. And I want a place that's not absolutely rigid, you know, as part of the whole self-assessment, you know, because you need to have that also.
Yeah, I think that's great. Well, I do have that student coming up in a few minutes.
All right. Well, this has been fun.
It's good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading the book. I'm looking forward to, seeing you at Nats presenting your paper as well. That'll be fun. Excuse me.
Great. So if anyone wants to check up on the book, there will be updates as it finally goes to press and so forth, and it will be available as an ebook also on sanesinging.com.
Oh, that's good. Yes, and I'll put the links down below and link to your blog as well, and that'll all be there. Thanks. All right. Well, thanks for chatting with me today.
Hey, thanks a lot, Karyn. It was fun.
All right. We'll do it again soon.
Okay, great.